use my affiliate link to support the channel down in the description. Hey, what's up, guys? MetaGamesGX here. We are joined by Clifton Land. And what did you recently do, sir?
I got top 16 at YCS Raleigh.
Awesome. And what deck were you playing?
Branded, of course.
Of course, branded best deck, branded best deck. I definitely wanted to have you on the channel, or at least cover your list, and I reached out, and you gladly wanted to come on the channel and come talk about the list. So I really do appreciate that. We are a branded-based YouTube channel over here, and I know a lot of people in my community wanted to see your list, and also just had questions on the list, because you had a very cool list. I think you went against the grain of the salt for really for what people are running with branded at the moment, and it performed for you very well. So before we get into that, did you have shout outs or plugs that you wanted to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and shout out my home store here in Kentucky. It's called Through the Decades. If you guys are ever in Kentucky, you should totally stop by the store, check it out, and see me. Shout out to my team, Top Choice Gaming, and then just all the people from Kentucky and all my friends who were rooting me on and stuff.
Awesome. Well, that being 32 card list, and maybe before we get through the card by card, what made you choose like a 40 card list versus a lot of the 50 to 60 card piles you've been seeing recently in the branded community?
Consistency, man. Consistency is key. I mean, especially when you're playing at a YCS, like minimum it's usually like 11, 12 round tournament, and that's just Swiss. That's not even before you get to top cut where it's single elimination. So you need your hands to be at least playable, every single round. But yeah, once you start getting those like bigger numbers, like especially like 45, 50 plus, that's where you can get like some really wonky hands. And that's not what I'm trying to do for a super, super long event. Even at 42, I'm still not happy. Like, I am a huge proponent of 40, so it hurt part of my soul to play 42, but this is what I was able to get it down to. We only had like a week to like kind of prepare, from like, because I was playing Fire up until that Saturday whenever the ban list dropped.
Oh, really?
And then I was kind of like, ooh, okay. So
back to the comfort pick.
I switched and back to the comfort pick. I was like, I don't really want to like race to find the new Fire combo, if that makes sense, because I knew that's what everyone else was going to try to be doing. So I was just like, well, I'm pretty good with branded, and I've played it a lot, so I'm a lot more comfortable with this deck, and it already has a solid matchup against Fire and Voiceless Voice. So yeah, just kind of went with the comfort pick.
Yeah, totally makes sense, and we'll talk about the card choices as we go through it. I see that we start off with the standard sauce: 3 Aluber, 3 Albaz. I feel like there's really not too much to say with those. I've seen some people run maybe 2 Albaz, but I see that 3 just.
It's so good.
Yeah, and
just normal summoning it's pretty good.
Yes, I was kind of saying this to people earlier in the format. Like obviously like really good Fire King boards will end on like Apo, but like also sometimes they don't have the Apo in main phase. So if you just have the normal summon Albaz to go over the Promethean Princess, it's kind of nice. So.
Yep, it automatically like threatens things like IP Masquerena, like if they have that on the field already or something. Because if they don't chain IP, then you just suck it up and make Mirror Jade. Or they could chain IP if they wanted and link off to like not lose their Flamberge, or they want to link off the Flamberge. That way, they at least get some follow up with the Snake Eye guys. Because a lot of times, if they couldn't do anything, they would just still chain IP and then link it and the Flamberge off for SP, and then Albaz would resolve. I would suck up, Albaz and the SP for Mirror Jade, but their Flamberge would still hit the graveyard and trigger to get them follow up for next turn. So that happened a couple times. But yeah, just being able to eliminate like a huge threat like that with the normal summon of a level 4 Dark Monster is pretty good.
Pretty free. And then we can talk about the girls. You run 3 Cartesia and 1 Quem. Can you talk about those ratios for a bit?
Yeah, so I feel like two Cartesia is probably the most standard, but there's a lot of effect negation in the format right now, especially with like Imperm, Veiler, and Mourner. And I thought that was going to continue to hold true, just with Fire not really getting hit. Everyone is pretty much always on like the 6 to maybe 9 effect negation cards, and Cartesia helps dodge all the best stuff, which is super, super nice. Same with like a Princess, like Princess, they'll like target card to pop and you're like chain Cartesia, fuse it off. Just getting value out of your cards. She's like the best extender. Grand Guanal is an amazing card, and I didn't try to stray away too crazy or do anything too cute. I kind of just wanted my deck to be like if I win the roll, I'm gonna steal game 1 with Gimmick Puppet, and then try to break some boards game 2, and then maybe game 3 I'm just gonna Gimmick Puppet them again. So I tried not to get too cute. I just try to max out on like Cartesia and the stuff because any way to Cartesia plus Branded Fusion is like best way or like most linear way to Gimmick Puppet lock them. So yeah, I just maxed out on the card that was gonna help me do that. And then Quim, I kind of just use it as a utility card. It's probably like one of my favorite cards in the deck. It's probably my favorite monster in the deck. The utility is super, super cool. Being able to bring back Mercurier for like a little extra monster negates, and looping Mirror Jade is awesome. I love bringing her like from the deck with Titaniclad and stuff. In the past, I've played like Nadir Servant and dumped like Lulu, and then summoned her from the deck and things like that. I really like Quim, but she doesn't do anything on her own. That's the only problem about Quim. She's a utility card. Most of the time, I don't want to see her in my opening hand because usually she does require a normal summon.
Yes, that's where I've been a big proponent recently of Tuquem, but because I do like it helps you play through Nibiru a little bit more and things like that. But like you said, it comes down to the normal summon. It comes down to the consistency. At the end of the day, you really only need that one Quem. Like if you're able to get through your combo, Resolve Branded Fusion, and Gimmick Lock, even with like you run quick play board breakers as well, like you have lots of interruptions. So I feel like the one Quem in your build is definitely understandable, and I do like how maxing out the Cartesia, very very understandable with that. You always just want to see that card. You just the hands I don't see Cartesia or an into Cartesia are my weak or like 50% weaker most of the time.
For sure.
Yeah, and you said a lot there because we've been also on Nadir Servant with Lulu as well. I thought that was actually quite good up until like branded voiceless started showing up, where like if you go Maximus, and then
you just can't.
Yeah, you just lose the game in the mirror. So no, those are something things to consider for like other contexts. New format, of course. Like I'm not sure if Branded's gonna keep up its representation this upcoming format. So maybe Nadir could come back in, but that's really cool that you're actually testing on Lulu. You did like that in the past.
Yeah, I love Nadir and Lulu. I actually topped nationals. I topped 32 nationals this past year with Branded, like during basically full power cash. I think a Rise Heart was at 1 and what Unicorn was at 2. But I mean, like, the deck was still super, super strong. And I mean, Cash is turn 1 making a Rise Heart every time, and I'm over here with Nadir Servant in my deck. Like, you can't even activate that card with a Rise Heart on the field. But the card was just so powerful, like, going first, and against any non-Cash deck. Just summoning Maximus puts you so far ahead. Yeah, I really like Lulu. I love summoning it off of Granguinol. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Maximus, Nadir, and Lulu. But exactly the same reason that you said. It does take up a lot of space, and I was already at 42, so I kind of just wanted to stray away from that. I didn't want to make my deck any more cards. And then, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of decks can play stuff in their extra deck that can punish you for using Maximus, such as like Voiceless Voice and the Mirror. Funny story, I think it was round 8 of day 1, I played against the Voices Voice deck. He wasn't playing branded cards, but he was just playing like Maximus with like Garura and Herald and stuff. And game 1, he like turn 1 Maximus is me. And he's over here like, yeah, I'll send Garura and Herald. And I'm over here like, oh, my sins are about to be much better than yours.
Yes, they are.
Like, yeah, I'm like, send Albion and what's his name, Titaniclad? And he was like, oh. So yeah, I mean, it's a risky card. It's very, very powerful, but no, yeah, I'm a fan of Nadir in the long run. I do like the card.
That's awesome. And then also I just want to ask you before we get any further, because I think I watched your IRL deck profile and I think you had a Dramaturge in there and it's not in this list. Was that, or am I just...
Nope. Yep.
You did.
No Dramaturge.
No Dramaturge? Okay.
Nope, no Dramaturge anywhere. That card's cool as hell, but yeah, no Dramaturge. I feel like in order to make that card work, you have to play like the poly version.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And honestly, that's why I was struggling with this event. I ran the Fright for Patchwork and I just kept drawing like Edgem Chain and like Poly and like a Saranir with like no Despia cards. I was like,
the Patchwork version is super powerful, but you do sacrifice some consistency. And once again, it's just like Nadir, like it's like minimum like a 5-card engine. You could do like 2 Patchwork, 2 Chain, and a Poly. But most of the time, I like something like 2/2/2, or maybe even like 3 Patchwork and then 2/2. Yeah, it's just a big engine. It loses hard to Droll, and Despia doesn't really care about Droll, so I don't want to put cards like that into my deck that will make my deck worse against a card that my deck already beats, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah,
Did you
the Patchwork stuff's cool. Yeah, a lot of Droll.
Yeah. Was it main
Well,
deck
mainly
draw or
game
side
one
deck?
because
Okay.
no main deck draw because normally they take it out after they're like, oh, he's unbranded, it's coming out. But yeah, I did lose my top 16 match because Cam Neal, who I lost to in top 16, he ended up winning the event, so shout out to him. But yeah, I lost to him in top 16 because game 2 he trolled me. He kept it in, and I totally did not play around it because I did not think it was in his deck. Game 2, I had to start with normal Aliber to add my branded fusion, and I also opened up branded lost. So like whenever I played lost and like fused and did stuff, I couldn't search off the branded lost, and it ended up I ended up being one kind of interaction short whenever it came to his turn because I wasn't able to add Mercarier or Mercarier off of the branded lost and stuff like that. It made my play on my turn much more funky. So he got away with it there, but yeah, I do not recommend keeping control versus branded.
Yeah, no, I think that's like definitely generally correct. And the thing is though, because I'm not sure how much you've been seeing like people like Nightfall's lists and stuff like that, but like we are basically running like things like Allure and Patchwork that in like 3 Shrouded Dragon that kind of do play into Droll. So maybe like Cam had the idea that you were on that kind of build, but like I don't know, he probably like I presume he asked how much you had in your deck, so like he should have probably known that you weren't on really a gas build anyway. So that
it was either that.
interesting.
Yeah, he was either assuming that maybe I played, or if I didn't play like a Lure, I had like Patrick in my deck. Or the other thing that I was thinking about is maybe he just wasn't as prepared for branded as he thought, and he probably just had some like too many dead cards in his deck, and like he was just like some of these cards are worse than Droll. You know what I'm saying? So like he physically didn't have enough like good cards to side in order to side out the Droll. So he was just kind of like, hopefully this catches something, and it did. So
that is but so yeah, no, we'll move on then to we see one tragedy, one Mercurier. That seems pretty standard. You aren't on the Lair of Darkness.
Yep, just don't want to draw him.
Yep. And then I see that you are running 1 Shrouded Dragon. How did you like the 1 Shrouded Dragon? There's a lot of people like 3 Shrouded Dragon.
Perfect. I mean, kind of same thing with like Droll. Don't want to make Droll good against your deck, you know what I'm saying? And most of the time, you're just either searching it off Branded Lost, or you are dumping it from your deck with like Granguinol or something like that in order to then use its effect to dump whichever missing piece that you need. Usually it's Retribution. But yeah, I mean, just to dump a card to draw a card is kind of like whatever. It helps like a little bit with consistency, but it is once per turn, and it doesn't like do too much by itself, It's all right, but yeah, no, 1 was totally fine. I don't want to have too many in my hands when I could just search it.
Yeah, totally fair. And then I do see that you have the Lubellion, Saronir, and then the Gimmick Puppet for the rest of the monsters. How did you like the main deck Gimmick Puppet? And I mean, yeah, because I feel like I don't know, it's been basically in everybody's deck lately. How did it go for you, the Gimmick Puppet?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, why would I not take like free auto wins, especially in a very long tournament? It's very good to have those quick games, just to maintain, stamina in a long round tournament. Just having those free quick wins and stuff. I don't even side it out. Unless I'm playing against something like a stun deck like Runic or Flunder or something. But no, I keep it in going second, because a lot of the times I just play board breakers, so I'll just like crack their board and try to set up a puppet for my opponent's turn. That way I don't have to worry about too much with like either killing them or trying to figure out how to loop Mirror Jades with Quim or something. Because you can leave like a couple of like against Snake Eye, you like attack over their Flamberge, clear some things. You leave like 2 or 3 like little Snake Eye guys in the field. That's totally fine. Draw face, Sanctifier, give them the puppet. They can't do anything with their little guys anyways. And then you just kill them on the crackback. No, yeah, Gimmick Puppet, it has to be in your main deck. I mean, it's just too free. I mean, it's so good. It's what everyone's afraid of. So, yes. Yeah, no, the free wins are definitely important.
Did you think Sanctifier was going to be banned as a tiny side tangent? Were you surprised that it didn't get banned?
Yeah, I was like, it's either going to get banned or they'll do some like OCG stuff. I believe Branded Fusion's at 1 in the OCG, and like Opening was hit at one point. I don't know if it still is. I don't keep up with OCG too much, but yeah, I was like, I mean, the deck's rising in popularity once again. It hasn't really won anything like recently, but I was like, so yeah, I mean, that's why I was testing Fire, because I was like, they're not going to murder Fire for if we do get a ban list in time for Raleigh. So I was kind of like, Brandon's going to get hit, and then maybe, I'll figure it out later if we do get a ban list before. And then we got the ban list, they touched Fire a little bit, and then didn't hit Branded at all. So I was like, oh, well, easy pick.
Fair enough. Did you miss the ad lib at all?
No, that's another card like kind of like Dramaturge. Whereas if you play it, I feel like you have to play a little bit more of like a polymerization or fusion build. So yeah, I mean it's a fantastic card. Looping Mirror Jade is incredible, especially with like Branded in red. Dumping it off of a Granguinol. Sometimes like if you can't go for like the puppet play. But yeah, no, I didn't miss it. It's another brick too. So I try to minimize those cards where I can. I kind of just streamline my deck for like puppet, as you can tell.
Yeah,
Didn't try to get
no,
too crazy with it.
it's very cool. I like it because the board breaker approach plus like the keeping in the puppet 100% logical, and I really like that.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
Sounds good. See the standard line of 3 branded fusion, 1 branded in red, 1 lost, 3 opening, and 1 retribution. Pretty standard. I'm not sure you didn't really run like high spirits, but this build doesn't really look like it's trying to facilitate like those type of dragon plays, so that's understandable.
Yeah, High Spirits is a super cool card. There's some nifty combos you can do with it, and I do like the card, but I feel like it's a card that you kind of have to build your deck around if you really want to get full value out of it. You can like bump up the dragon count and just play like one to search off of a Luber, but I think if I were to play High Spirits, I would try to like bump up the dragon count a lot, like max out on Saronir and stuff. And then I would play like 3 High Spirits, and really, really make the deck like towards that. One of my favorite lines is actually playing a Sprint, the Iron Dash Dragon, and activating High Spirits and like dumping Gimmick Puppet from my hand if I opened it. There's a cool line with that because they're machines. So
Oh
I
yeah,
like
that's
doing that one. I've
nice.
done that one before. So yeah, High Spirits is a super super cool card, and the free discard fodder it coming back every end phase is really really nice with always having something to discard off of Alabas or Lubellion. And then I think a lot of people have been bumping up Branded in red, like maybe to like 2 and stuff. But yeah, kind of in my deck, I'm not really doing like any patchwork, any crazy fusion lines. Mainly just need the Branded in red for the Sanctifier play. That way you can summon it under Lost on your opponent's turn, and then puppet them to where they can't interact with you at all. Yeah, I wasn't really using it to like break boards or do anything. Mainly just there to search. Kind of like Quim, once again, it's really good, but you can search it whenever you need it, and it doesn't do anything by itself. Sometimes if your hand's like nice and it can help you like crack boards and dodge effect negation and stuff. But yeah, most of the time it doesn't do anything by itself, and you can recycle it with like a retribution or tragedy if you really have to.
Yeah, exactly. So it can definitely come back into rotation.
Hmm.
And then you have a huge board breaker package.
Oh yeah.
We have 3 droplet, 3 super poly, triple tactics talents, and 3 triple tactics thrust. Would you like to talk about why you ran this lineup?
Yeah, so you can't really play hand traps in branded, because in order for hand traps to be effective, you almost have to draw them in pairs. Unless it's a high impact hand trap like Nib or Troll against a deck that those high impact hand traps are good against. For example, like Nibiru against Salamangreat, where maybe that's an exaggerated example, but they have no way to stop Nibiru. It kind of just the board just gets literally rocked. Or like Droll against Vanadium, it can literally end the turn. But like most hand traps need to be in pairs, so you need like Nib Ash or like Valor Nib or even Valor Ash against Snake Eye decks. So you have to play a lot of hand traps. Most time at least bare minimum 9, but a lot of times 12 plus, and you always have to draw them in pairs. So with Brandon having such a huge engine, you can't afford all of those hand trap slots. So I just went with board breakers because most of the time, since board breakers are so powerful, if you draw just one, you're usually good to go. Barring some like weird cases, maybe with like Super Poly, if you don't have like a clean Super Poly route. So Super Poly is the one that I was most on the fence about, but I'll talk about that one last. The best card in my deck was definitely Forbidden Droplet. This deck has a lot of normal and quick play spells that you can just like play and chain together, wait for your opponent to like do something, and then chain Droplet and send them all in order to get max value out of the card. And then just even like little interactions like normal Luber effect, it gets Valor impermed, chain droplets, send it, negate something, and get your branded fusion. You can like even like send Granguinol or like Alb or Lubellion and stuff whenever you're after you fusion summon, just to dodge effect negation and things like that.
Yep,
And
yep.
then talents and thrust. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, yeah. And then talents and thrust are just both incredible board breaker cards. I didn't draw it off of talents. I might have looked at the hand a couple times, maybe like 2 or 3 times max. But yeah, most of the time I was just taking cards. I took so many Appaloosas over the weekend. I used Appaloosa, I feel like, more than my opponents did.
Oh my gosh,
It's
yeah.
just, yeah, because you just like do something like Aliber or Cartesia, Albaz, something to like force it, and then the Appaloosa usually has like 1, maybe 2 negates left, and then you can talents take it, and then even if it has like one negate left, that negates Ash Blossom or whatever for your branded fusion. And then
Huge.
later on the turn, I would just like banish it off Lubellion and like Alabast to make Mirror Jade or something.
Did you end up liking 3 ratios of triple tactic? Only run 1? Did you like the 3? It worked out.
Yeah, I just wanted to max out on every single thing that I could search with Thrust. That way, if I was missing one of the pieces, I could just Thrust for the other piece. So for a lot of times, there would be like, I would normal Alabast, use its effects, and then it would get negated by Appaloosa. But I opened Talents, so then I could Talents take the Appaloosa, and then I could Thrust for Branded Fusion. You know, or like vice versa. If I open like Thrust and Branded Fusion, then I would try to bait out like the Appaloosa, and then I would Thrust for the Talents. Talents take the Appaloosa, or try to take an IP, threaten whatever, and then I would play whatever power spell I had. So I just wanted to max out on all of the power spells. That way Thrust could just search me whichever one I was missing. That was kind of like the logic with that. And Branded, I mean, all the guys are huge. Sometimes you can just take like a Flamberge or a big monster and kill your opponent. That happened a couple times. I took an Impin one time, just killed somebody with it after I activated Branded Fusion because Impin's huge.
It gets under nib.
So yeah. So sometimes Talents can just it can steal games like that. I mean, Talents is a hell of a card. This card could be on like the list one day. Super good card.
Yeah, I think it will be one day. We'll see. That's like the one card all my like quote unquote friends are like up in arms about. It's like either 50% of the time the best card or 50% of the time the worst card.
100%. And then I mean Thrust kind of just talked about it. Super good on searching like all of your power spells and stuff. And then it has the added application to set fusion duplication. Whereas this was probably the worst card in my deck all weekend.
Really?
I only ever resolved it once, and I didn't need it. It was just kind of like overkill. It helped me go for a game like under nib, but my opponent had bricked, so I was definitely winning that game anyways. It just kind of like helped me end the game a turn earlier, I guess, or safer, I guess you could say. It never ever came up that I was able to Thrust set the duplication after my Branded Fusion got ashed. That never happened, and then it contributed to like 2 or 3 brick hands, especially in top 16. I opened this card, and it was just I couldn't get to my Alibert got Ghost Mortar whenever I summoned it off opening, so I couldn't even get to the Branded Fusion. So yeah, this would be like the first card that I'd cut fusion duplication. It's just,
Would you?
I don't think it's needed. No, I'll still play Thrust.
Yeah.
Just searching all the power spells is too valuable. Board breakers are just super good in this format. I guess the only reason is maybe I could cut Thrust or something is if the synchro version of the Snake Eyes deck really catches on, where they're doing like the Omega Dissipator hand loop, because that makes board breakers a little worse because they're just ripping cards out of your hand, and a lot of these cards like Droplet and Super Poly, and then even like Branded Opening, you have to discard a card in order to make them live. So you're only playing with like 4 cards after you get 2 ripped out of your hand, which kind of sucks. But there's a lot of times where even if your hand's like decent, you can still like break that board even with 4 cards.
100%.
But yeah, that's probably like the only way. I'm sorry?
I was just gonna say
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say that's probably like the only time that I would think about maybe like going like a little bit less on like the board breaker route, as if like a hand rip kind of version came out. But otherwise, I think board breakers is for sure the route to go. Maybe I just need more like testing with fusion duplication and stuff. I've never actually played this card before. This is the first event I've ever played with fusion duplication. I mean, I tested for the event and stuff, and then it never really came up in testing. But I mean, the logic's there for this card. But yeah, it just never ever came up this event. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It just didn't work out this event. But I still performed well, so that's good. I sat it out pretty much every single time going second too.
Yeah, that's definitely like the aside outgo stack. Did you want to talk about Purrely because hesitant on?
Yeah.
I know you have the
So
Garura
this
and the
was-
Mud Dragon.
Yeah, I played Garura and Mud Dragon, and then I guess you can like kind of count Drago's Despia. That one came up a couple of times where like I would summon like Albion to use its effective fuse, and then one time it got like impermed, and my opponent had SP Loto Knight on the field, so I just super polyed away the Albion and the SP. That was super nice. But those situations don't come up too much. But yeah, I don't think I ever super polyed for Garura, but I super polyed for Mud Dragon like 2 or 3 times, and then I think the Sepelia once. But yeah, Super Poly was definitely the weirdest card going to the event. The card's extremely powerful, but since we just got the ban list before, people were kind of like scrambling to figure out what to play, and that's why either when Super Poly can be the worst card in your deck or the best card in your deck. Because if people are just going to end on, generic end boards because a combo, or like the best combo, I should say, hasn't really been found out, the most optimized one, Super Poly can just murder boards because people might just be making or defaulting to generic, like, end fire boards. Like if Fire King is just ending on, like, generic, like, Amblo Whale and Arvada, you know what I'm saying? Like Super Poly just murders that board. But if like pure Snake Eye is still doing like Appaloosa Flamberge IP, you can't use Super Poly against that board at all. So depending on how the format was going to shape up, Super Poly was either going to be really good or really bad. But the potential for the card was there. It's good in the mirror, and I thought Branded was going to be pretty popular. I thought a lot of people were going to default to Fire King just because on the surface level it got hit the least because it doesn't play the synchros and it doesn't care about Link Karibo as much as the pure version did. So Super Poly would be much better against the Fire King version, which I thought people would default more to. It's good against the mirror, and it's really, really good against Voiceless Voice, especially if you have Branded Lost, or if they couldn't end with the ritual spell in the graveyard. Super Poly can just suck up their whole board, suck up the low and the Skull Guardian in order to make Mud Dragon, and that happened at least 2 or 3 times. So I'm glad I ended up playing it, and it helped play through a lot of boards. Just with like Summon Albaz and then Super Poly, discard a card, suck it up, and Appaloosa to make Mirror Jade. That even happened a couple of times. So I'm glad I played it, but if I were to cut a card, it would probably either be the Fusion Duplication or the Super Polys. Just because until like the format gets more solved, we don't really know what people are ending on. So if the end boards are not playing around Super Poly, then this card gains a lot of added value. But if people are starting to play around it, then keep maining it and then just side it out if you're playing against a deck that's not like Voiceless, where it doesn't have like a standard end board that can be Super Poly. Yeah, what I wanted to do was either probably cut the 3 Super Poly, and I wanted to add in another consistency card. Foolish Burial was at the top of my list, because you can activate it, you can dump Sarnier, and then you can dump another card. You can dump Tragedy and add Aluber. Or if your hand's super, super weird, but you're able to get to like Branded Fusion, but maybe you don't have access to like Cartesia or something, worst case, you can just Foolish Burial the Gimmick Puppet and set up a super linear line for that. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. I would probably make my 40th card if I cut the 3 Super Poly and added Foolish Burial.
Okay, and then I guess by the extension, you didn't miss the gold Sarc. Maybe you just didn't want to play. You could.
Yep, Droll, and then it kind of has the same application as Foolish Burial in some scenarios. Whereas, like if you Foolish Burial or Gold Sarc Tragedy, either way, it's getting you the Aluber. But since my version was super, super dedicated on the Puppet, if you Gold Sarc Puppet, it doesn't really do too much, But if you Foolish Puppet, it's in the graveyard, so yeah. So since my build was much more focused on Puppet, yeah, the Foolish Burial was the card on the top of my list.
And then I think the one card we didn't mention was the deployment, but that's quite standard at this point for Branded.
Yeah, that Call Up Out of the Grave, it just has to be in your deck.
Yes, sir.
Both those cards are nasty.
Yes, sir. So I guess we'll get into the extra deck at that point. You have a few interesting choices for sure. We have 2 Mirror Jade, 2 Albion, 1 Lubellion. Did you end up liking the 2 Mirror Jade, like for kashtira and those purposes? I've seen some people like only run 1 Mirror Jade sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mirror Jade's just so good. I think you have to play 2. Yeah. The only thing that I would like probably consider cutting in the extra deck would be like the Super Poly stuff.
Okay.
Even like Quertus went like dummy over the weekend. Super good. I love this card so much. It's not the most optimal, all the time, but sometimes it can really it can cheese some wins. But yeah, I really 2 Albion standard, 1 Lubellion standard. Because it puts itself back, of course. Yeah, I think 2 Mirror Jade is a mandatory. Because sometimes you can grind, especially if you don't like Puppet or you're going second. You can't always bring it back off Quim. And since I'm only playing 1 Quim, I always like the opportunity of being able to make another one if I can't bring it back. But yeah, especially with like Super Poly and stuff, there's a lot of times where like whenever you're like trying to break a board and then your Mirror Jade just gets answered immediately by like a Snake Eye board or something. It gets popped or negated in some sort of way if you don't have opening in the graveyard to like save it. I played against Purrely, and a lot of times like my Mirror Jade got sucked up one time because obviously that's what they're trying to do. They're either trying to do that or spin it back because they don't want it in the graveyard. So yeah, I'm glad I had a second one in order to like keep threatening the Noir. Yeah, I think 2 comes up. It's just so good. I want to summon it every turn that I can, And they always have to deal with it, so.
Yeah, some decks just have such a going over that card. And same with Quertus by that extension, so. And then you had, for the rest of like the monster, or for like the Albaz Despia fusion monsters, you had 1 Rinbrum, 1 Titanclad, and then you had the Sanctifier, and then the 1 Grand Guignol. I would have to ask, did you miss the second Grand Guignol at all?
Nope, never.
Never.
No, yeah, never. I've never ever played with 2 Granguinol. I feel like a lot of times I just feel like the second one's a crutch. If I had a 16th extra deck card, I mean, don't get me wrong, the second Granquinol would be there just because, it is a fantastic card. And if you play things like Quertus or if you can find room for Lulu, it gains just even extra added value because, it can also summon like Quim from deck and stuff. No, the card's fantastic. I love Granquinol, but it's pretty much just there to dump the puppet in my deck. I don't really use utility as much as maybe other versions do with like High Spirits and the kind of like the patchwork versions and stuff. And every time that you summon Granquinol in this version, it's always after you've branded fusioned and then dumped your Lubellion, and the Lubellion is placed lost on the field, so they just can't interact with the Granquinol. It's always going to resolve under the lost in order to dump the puppet, and then after that, it's kind of done its job. A lot of times, I'll just banish it with Branded and Red, keep the Cartesian in my hand to make the Sanctifier Dragon.
Oh wow,
So yeah, the card's fantastic, but no, never miss the second one. Quercus was amazing. Kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. I killed 2 people through like 6 monster boards because they just had like huge fields, and instead of me having to be like, dang, how do I answer all of their monsters? Or they didn't have like a huge monster in attack mode where I could like bump Mirror Jade into it and then start playing and like set up a puppet line because I knew in the end phase Mirror Jade was going to clear their board. That's usually what I try to do, especially if you don't play Quercus. But yeah, in those situations, they just didn't have a monster big enough for me to do that. But yeah, there was like 2 times where I was able to summon Quercus and then make all of their guys 0 and just kill them through their own board, which is always super funny because they never expect to die with 6 monsters on the field.
Awesome.
Titaniclad overperformed this weekend. This is probably like one of the best cards in my deck. I played against 2 Flunder, and this card just goes insane against it because normal Albaz suck up Impin, and then it becomes like a million attack because Impin's a huge level. So yeah, this card's super good. Summoning Quim, is amazing. A pretty good generic super poly target too. Albaz plus any big monster. That way you don't have to worry about lining up attributes or anything, which is cool. I only summoned Renbrum once, I believe, and it was against Flunder, and I'd never ever used its graveyard effects. Most of the time just because I was winning with like Puppet or killing them or something. But yeah, I love Renbrum. Super awesome card. I love using its graveyard effects. If you can, I feel like most people just always forget about it. Garura and Mud Dragon, I feel like that's pretty standard for super poly.
Did you do you think you could cut the Garura if you ran the super poly package, because you said you didn't go into it, or is that just kind of a variance thing? You kind of have to have it if you're on super poly?
Yeah, just a variance thing because sometimes you do need it against awkward states against the Pure Snake Eye deck because all their little guys are fire and pyros. So sometimes it does come up if you need to suck up like a Flamberge and a little guy, or sometimes you just have to use Super Poly as a defensive card. Maybe if your hand was like a little weak or your Puppet or something got stopped, you just have to like suck up 2 little Snake Eye guys and summon a Garura and hope it gets you there. There's been times where I like stuck up 2 little guys for the Garura, and then I had like Branded and Red and then banished the Garura and Albaz to make the Mirror Jade. So I had to like climb into it that way. Sometimes you just got to make it work. But yeah, I feel like if it's just such a generic card, you kind of got to play it. Same with like Mud Dragon.
100%. Did you like the Borrelfurious Dragon?
Oh, bro, yeah, I was saving that card for last. That was the best card in my extra deck.
Yeah. Would you like to? Well, then we can save that for the last card, and we'll get to it after then.
Yeah.
So then Stepelia, did you like that overall, or do you think it's more cuttable than anything?
No, yeah, I think you have to play it. It's just a generic good card, and it's your default play whenever you get shifted. That way you can still play Branded Fusion, you can dump your Albaz in Tragedy, and then Aliber can search you, or you can search Aliber off Tragedy, and then Aliber can get you your Branded Opening or Fusion or whatever you need for the follow-up, and then your Lubellion that you made off of Branded Fusion ends up recycling itself, and then like an Albaz or whatever that was banished to make your Drago Stepelia. So this is kind of like your default card to go to under Shifter if you have to, and it's really good against the like rogue decks. It's fantastic against Flunder. It's like weirdly good against Cash because it makes all of their guys level 1. And Stepelia is pretty big. They can't really beat it without having Great Soft. So just being able to consistently negate their guys and make them level 1 so that they can't like make rank 7s to kind of extend past that is super nice. It's also just like a generic extra fusion monster to go into on your opponent's turn. There was times where like I couldn't make Guardian Chimera, or I had already used Mirror Jade and I couldn't like clear it off the field. And sometimes this deck just needs like an extra interaction, and that's what Stepelia usually provides. If you like, especially if you can't get to another negate like Mercury or something. Yeah, Stepelia is just a super good generic fusion monster. And then Guardian Chimera. Even though I don't play Adlib, I feel like this card just has to be played. It has the potential to like just pop 2 cards and steal a game. Once again, like kind of like Stepelia, it's really good against the weird decks. Branded doesn't really have any in archetype or like in engine like removal for Backrow that's played. So Guardian Chimera is like our best way of doing that usually. Like Kashtira Birth is a hell of a card. It just murders Branded Fusion because Branded Fusion unfortunately puts exactly 3 cards in the graveyard for them to banish with Birth. So yeah, Guardian Chimera being able to pop problematic cards like Dreaming Town, if you can like do it in the draw phase so they can't chain it. Pops Map. Stun decks like the Runic decks, it can clear like fountains, synchro zones. It can help you like dodge stuff. If you can like get it off the field, if they have skill drain. If they have Hugin on the field, you can Guardian Chimera, pop Hugin, and pop another card. And then since Hugin's marked for destruction, it can't use it to save it, so you still get to pop the 2 cards. Yeah, it's a fantastic card. You have to play it.
Yeah, no, no, totally understandable, and you give actually a lot of good utility for the card, so thank you for that. Or for Grand Chimera and Stapelia, and that totally makes sense. With all the stun decks as well, just like, oh my gosh, you kind of need to.
Yep.
So I guess that leaves us with Furious Dragon. What was your logic with that, and how did it perform for you?
It performed amazing. So the logic was stun decks. Most of the time, decks like that usually you can ignore because there's just like usually that's just kind of like something you see like round 1 or 2, maybe round 3 at a YCS, and then after that, the deck's just inherently bad, so it's just gonna fall off. It doesn't make it to the later rounds. Because there's usually like a couple people playing in the tournament, just whatever stun deck. But no, with like the runic stuff and everybody just so sick and tired of playing against fire, stun has gained a lot of popularity within the past couple months to where it was like actually a real deck, so it had to be respected a little bit. So instead of me making like a full concession and building my deck to like actually beat it, whereas like maining Cosmic Cyclone or I cited like some back row hate and stuff like that, but I wanted to have another kind of in-engine way to deal with the card outside of Guardian Chimera, because he's kind of only like the one shot, the one push use, just whenever he's summoned. But Furious is kind of like a card that just can't be dealt with, and it constantly on each player's turn deals with threatening popping a card, because it's basically just quick effect pop a card. And stun decks having to make them like deal with this threat every single turn is huge. Especially like the runic decks, they don't really play any monsters. So if once Furious is on the field, they like can't deal with it. Especially if you can like put a branded opening in the graveyard. That means they have to have double flashing fire in order to kill it. And even if they do kill it, you can summon Lubellion and then like shuffle it back and then make it again. Or you can even make Sanctifier Dragon and then just revive it.
Yeah,
so
they can't even interact with Sanctum the most.
Exactly. So Sanctifier is the card you want to make against Runic anyways, because he can't be targeted. So it just goes super, super, super well. And there's a lot of nifty things you can do with the card. Like you can go like activate effects, target Cartesia, target opponent's card, and then you can chain Cartesia to fuse. And then it says destroy them, so they don't both have to die. So even though Cartesia leaves the field to fuse, it'll still end up resolving and popping your opponent's card. And then same with like a branded opening, you can protect your fusion monsters. So like worst case, if you have to like pop itself, pop an opponent's card, and then on resolution, whenever the chain ends, branded opening can banish itself to save your Furious Dragon. So you can get multiple uses out of the card. And it's good at dealing with like the weird stuff like Kashtira Birth, for example. Yeah, just so you can like summon it, kill a Fenrir, and then pop the Birth, and then you can save it again for like popping an opponent's Birth or a Kashtira monster on the follow-up. Yeah, it was an incredible card. Best utility card in my extra deck all week.
Wow. Okay, so definitely keeping that in.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. I mean, we didn't talk about the Sanctifier, but I feel like that's a need not apply situation if we're on the puppet build. And then we have the side deck here, which I find actually quite interesting. You have 3 DD Crows and 3 Drolls, Droll and Lockbirds for a little bit of a hand trap package in the side deck. What made you run like the Crows maybe over something? In your side deck, you're running 3 DD Crow and then 3 Droll and Lockbird. How did those perform for you, and what made you pick those for your side deck?
So I mainly went with the board breaker route, but there's some stuff that board breakers just can't beat, and that's usually like the crazy decks. So think something kind of like an FTK like cringe deck, or like something like Minadium, where like it doesn't really matter how good your board breakers are. If you just get like calamities or you literally get FTK'd, you just lose, right? So, because you don't get a turn, so you can't use your board breakers. So Brandon's usually pretty good at breaking boards, so I kind of just wanted some hand traps to like be like an emergency button, if I do happen to play against one of those decks. I didn't want to be like completely defenseless. And the reason I chose these two is because I wanted to kind of widen the net, if that makes sense, rather than like I wanted a bunch of cards that like overlap with a bunch of other decks rather than really narrowing it down. So for example, like Bystials, that's what most of the time you see in people's side decks. It's good against like generic like decks. Like it's okay against voiceless. Sometimes you can like snipe a Saphir or a low, and it's really really good. Or against like the pure Snake Eye decks, you know, sniping IP is cool. But I mean, DD Crow does the same thing because like you can snipe IPs, you can snipe lows and stuff out of graveyard. But it can also snipe weird cards. So it can snipe like the ritual spell from their graveyard, which is really really good whenever you're playing branded because if they don't have the ritual spell in the graveyard, Super Poly and Mirror Jade become much much more effective because you don't have to worry about them banishing it and summoning another Skull Guardian from their deck and then having to deal with that one. Also, Purrely is a really hard matchup for branded if the Purrely player knows what they're doing, and Bystials can't do anything to Purrely. But DD Crow murders Purrely. As soon as Lily's like target sleepy in graveyard, you just chain Crow on its spell, it can end their turn. So that's why I wanted to have more generic cards for those weird matchups rather than just playing Bystials. And I mean, I already played one of my main, like Saronir, but yeah, no, Crow was super super good over the weekend. Droll, I cited it in a couple times, but I never saw it, so I can't speak on it like too much for how it performed at the event. But in theory, really really good. It's all right against Voiceless Voice. It's really really good against those weird decks, kind of like I was saying. And once again, it's usually pretty solid against Purrely.
Did you ever side in Droll versus Fire?
If I was playing Fire King, yes, but I only played 2 Fire decks all weekend, and they were both pure. So yeah, I don't side in Droll against pure.
Sure, that's totally understandable. And then, did you miss Nibiru, or was that ever a thought with your side deck hand trap package?
Yep, it was either going to be Nibiru or Droll for the kind of like emergency button hand trap. But we went with Droll just because it's a little bit better against Fire King, whereas sometimes Nibiru, it needs to be like paired with another hand trap in order to have like a huge impact in order to beat Fire, and then Nibiru can't be used against Purrely pretty much at all. So yeah, so like Droll's pretty good against Fire King. So was Crow. I mean, you can snipe Princess, you can snipe Garunix out of the grave, whereas like Bystials can't. So yeah, we kind of just took like 2 like relatively generic hand traps, and then yeah, kind of like instead of making like the Bystials, we went with the Crows mainly for their utility against the harder matchups for branded, whereas Bystials wouldn't serve the same purpose.
So overall, I just want to pin you down on the D-Crow because I feel like, honestly, I've been thinking myself that Bystials, or that Crow might be better than Bystial in, like, at least the branded context right now because it's way more generic, and with Purrely coming up, it's like, are we really going to be siding or maining Book of Eclipse? Well, I'm not sure, but, like, DD Crow also hits basically everything. Did you find it to be impactful enough for it to, like, justify the side deck going forward?
Yeah, for sure. DD Crow it was fantastic. Really, really good against Purrely. I mean, that was the main matchup that I was going to be scared against. I wasn't sure how many people were going to play it, but since Delicious did come back to 2, it's Purrely is a comfort pick for a lot of people. The deck's been around for a while. It's good, has a large fan base. So I could definitely see that going. Whenever you're playing in like a big event like a YCS, those like weird kind of thoughts, it's not a local. You kind of have to like think about it in terms of like that. You're like, Purrely's popular. People like this deck. Delicious came back to 2. People are going to be playing this. You can't just write it off, especially if it's like a really, really bad matchup. It's not something like Flunder where it's kind of like generic stun deck. Most of the time you could just play through the board and beat it. You just can't beat a Noir. If it's summoned like properly with Delicious. So you can't completely ignore that. No, yeah, Crow was fantastic all weekend. It was one of the best side deck cards. And even a Purrely made top 32. So yeah, no, gotta respect it a little bit.
And I guess by extension, then I do see the Herald of the Abyss too. Did you like that for Purrely?
Yep, it was for Purrely, and I sided it in against pure Snake Eye. You can thrust for it and send Appaloosa.
Oh, that's a good application for that. I like when Herald, when it's in the format, if there's like another deck that you can use it against, honestly. I liked using it against Unchained in the Unchained format. Like it just like slightly. Like I know that might not be like horrible. Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't horrible.
It's just good for those it's good for those problem cards, and it's another power spell that you can thrust for. Yeah, it was mainly there for Noir, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it's just another card that it can be thrust for, and kind of talking about or sticking with the theme of like widening the net. Just generic cards that you can thrust for that can possibly have good applications in a very diverse format. Since it's the very first week, you could literally play against anything. Like I have my matches like right here on my phone, so like 11 rounds of Swiss, I only played two fire decks, and only one was in Swiss, and the other was in Top Cut. Like I played against like 4 voiceless, and then everything else was just completely random. So yeah, in a format like this where it's just like 1 week of prep time, a lot of people will revert to their comfort picks. So expect to play against a bunch of weird things, some like meta stuff too, but you kind of want to just have your deck to be as generic, as consistent as possible for an event like this.
Totally makes sense. And then we do see for the other singletons a change of heart. Did you like the change of heart to go along with the whole apotheke game plan?
Oh yeah, shout out to the guy I played round 4. I'm so sorry. I changed a heart. Oh god, yeah. Game 2, he just full snake eyes comboed, and I changed a heart and took his Appaloosa. It had like 4 on it. Oh yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, this card's fantastic. It's mainly there just to take Appaloosa, pretty much specifically, and you can thrust for it. Yeah, well, fantastic card. Same as Feather Duster. I drew this card a lot and thrusted for it a lot, just to deal with like stun decks, Flunder. I put it in against Voiceless. Just to deal with like their traps and all that stuff. And sometimes they still side floods, like the one of like anti-spell. I played against one guy who was playing like Shadal Schism. It could just be like a backer deck. Worst case, it cleans up like the barrier, the trap, and like maybe an Imperm or something. But yeah, no, Duster was solid too.
And for more back row removal, I see you do have the Cosmics, Evenlies. How did you like the Cosmics? I mean, with like Runic Stun running around, was that kind of protection for that kind of thing?
Yep, it was the protection for like Runic Stun. It's pretty good against Flunder because you can snipe map, or if they only set 1, you can draw phase, snipe the Dreaming Town, which matters a lot. And at worst, it is like the only card in my deck that could really be a going first card if I needed it. So if I'm playing as like Voiceless or like Kashtira or something that maybe plays like heavy field spell type deck, you could like take out something like Super Poly or like Droplet if it's not applicable enough in the matchup, and you can put in Cosmic going first. That way you can catch a field spell, or against like what's it called? Voiceless Voice, you can catch the barrier or something, because I don't play any other going first cards. Most of the time, you just want to Gimmick Puppet your opponent going first, so I try to make my side deck for pretty much strictly going second, because if I get to go first, that's already a blessing enough, I'm just going to puppet them and then hopefully win the game. But yeah, worst case, if it fails, I try to have like a little bit of something, and this is kind of like the most generic card that can be for going first. And it's really good going second, Sniping Backrow, really, really good against Pure. They like Temple, target the IP, or they like Flamberge up the IP. You just chain Cosmic, cook them. Good against Fire King, Banish Island, all sorts of stuff like that. And then Evenly, this was the best card in my side deck. Use it a lot. You can thrust for it. And since they took all away like most of the Omni Negates in the format, such as Baron and Savage, this card just gained a lot of value. It just murders fireboards. The only thing I guess it wouldn't be good against is kind of like Voiceless Voice, because they do have the Omni Negate and School Guardian. But if you can negate it or bait it out, then Evenly can still do some work. But yeah, it's very, very strong against the fire decks, and then once again, very good against Runic and like the rogue decks that can't put up Omni Negates. Just being able to thrust for it's amazing.
Yeah, so you would definitely keep them going forward to run.
For sure. Yeah, there was a couple times where I would just like Evenly and then clear the board, and they would like keep like 1 power card, like to keep like the Appaloosa that like had like 2. But Brandon can totally play through that, and then since they just like lost all their cards, I would just beat like the 1 interruption, because Brandon's good at like answering cards outside of the battle phase, whereas like Furious Dragon can pop a cards to play, can negate something, Mirror Jade just banishing a card. So I would just answer whatever card they kept and then set up the puppet lock, because I always kept it in even when I went second. So yeah, just clearing the board and then puppeting them is just GG.
You want to?
Yeah, we can. So I had a 2-round bye because I had I won a VIP qualifier. So round 1 and 2 were buys. Round 3 I played Voiceless. I won the roll. I beat him 2-1. I don't think there was anything crazy about that matchup. I just puppeted him game 1. He tried to play through it. I don't know why, but it let me know what he was playing, so I'll take it. Round 4 was Pure Snake Eye. Game 1 I puppeted him. He tried to play through it but couldn't, and then game 2 I hard opened Change of Heart. So I took his huge Appaloosa, and then he basically just couldn't activate any card effects for the rest of the turn, and I killed him. Round 5 I played against Kashtira. I lost the roll, and I got 2-0'd by this guy. This was like the only... Oh my gosh, this game was just terrible. I basically just got shifted twice. And then Cash, yeah, he just beat me down. It wasn't much of a game, but that guy also topped, so shout out to him. Round 6 I played Purrely. I lost the roll and still 2-0'd him. Game 1, I believe he bricked, and then I puppeted him. And then game 2, he was able to make a Fatten War and I didn't. But he made it with Yeep. He didn't hard make it, so I kind of just grinded out the game a little bit and just kept answering a lot of his other monsters. And then I eventually like tried to keep threatening puppet locking him, so that he kind of kept having to shuffle back stuff with his Noir. But yeah, against that deck, if they make the Noir with Yeep, you kind of just want to start clearing off all the other guys. That way they can't do anything with the Noir, or they can't kill you. So it ended up just being he had to like attack with the Noir. He wasn't able to get to like another monster. He needed to like hard make a Noir, so he ended up just having to slap a Zeus on top of the Noir, and Zeus is not a problem for Branded. Round 7 was my feature match on stream. You guys can watch that. I played against Flunder. Game 1, I drew the best hand that I drew all day. Puppeted him and everything, but unfortunately he was playing Flunder. But he didn't draw too hot, so thankfully I won that. And then game 2 he bricked. Round 8 was Voiceless. I won the roll, puppeted him, and then game 2 he opened up a super nasty hand. He had like full combo with like Schism, Winda, Imperm, Ash Blossom, and everything. And then my hand was kind of just crafted a little bit. I Harpied Feather Duster, and then he tried to negate it with Skull Guardian, and then I basically just like dropleted his whole board. And then I played Branded Fusion. He had Ash Blossom, but I'd call it by the grave. So kind of just that game just worked out.
Nice.
Round 9, I played against Fluent Ruiz. I lost the roll. I played against Nicholas Ortiz. He's like known for playing Flunder, so I was worried about that matchup because it's already hard for Branded, and he's a really good Flunder player. So just as soon as we sat down, I was like, oh no. I lost the roll. Game 1, got shifted. He folded me game 1. Game 2, I went first. My hand was all right, but he shifted me. But I activated Fusion Duplication. Or not Fusion Duplication, sorry. I thrusted for Branded Fusion, and then set it and passed. And then he did Flunder stuff, but wasn't able to kill me or deal with the Branded Fusion. And then on my turn, I just normal summoned Albaz, discarded a card, sucked up his Impin that he had on the field, and then I played my Branded Fusion and was able to kill him that turn. Wow. And then game 3, kind of similar thing. He opened up just kind of like normal Flunder hand. Impin won Backrow, which is Dreaming Town. He passed to me. I normal summoned Albaz, sucked up his Impin again, made a huge Titanic Lad. I activated Branded Fusion, started doing some stuff. He ended up activating Dreaming Town, normal summoning Eaglin, and then I had Forbidden Droplet to negate the Eaglin, so I was able to kill him that turn. So, yeah, Droplet bailed me out in that game. Round 10, so that's day 2, round 1 of day 2. Played against Crystal Blanc, another super good player. Game 1, he wins the roll, makes insane board. I killed him through like normal board. He had like Appaloosa, IP, Temple, Flamberge, and 2 set Imperms. And I was able to kill him through that because I had like Branded Fusion, Cartesia, Albaz, and then I had Super Poly for his IP whenever he brought it up. So yeah, I was able to just crush him through that board, and then made the Mud Dragon so my guys couldn't be targeted by the Imperms. So yeah, that was really, really good. Super Poly, that was like the craziest Super Poly ever. Game 2, he goes first, normal board, sets an Imperm. My only play, unfortunately, was I had Thrust, Talents, some Board Breakers, and Aliber. I normaled Aliber, and he unfortunately had Imperm, which made all the other cards, like the Board Breakers and stuff, in my hand dead because he didn't use the monster effect, and my only play was Aliber, unfortunately. So that happened. Game 3, since we had a grindy, like game 1, with like the Super Poly and all that interaction. Game 3, we were running pretty low on time. I ended up puppeting him, but my hand wasn't super, super good. It wasn't able to do like the full combo. I puppeted him without Branded Fusion. I like hard open Branded in red, Cartesia, and Albaz. So it was like super, super weird. I didn't have a lot of follow up, which was unfortunate. But yeah, we start grinding a little bit. He does some Snake Eyes stuff, just like normaling Ash, kind of like thinning his deck, trying to look for an ouch for like Droplet or something to like negate the Sanctifier on one turn so that he could push. And then ended up getting to the point where he had a Flamberge in the graveyard, and I passed to him, and he was like low on life. And I activated Sanctifier, and I gave him the puppet, and I took his Flamberge. That way I could try to threaten lethal the next game, or next turn. But for turn, he drew Ghost Mourner. So he was able to activate Ghost Mourner whenever I summoned the Flamberge and the puppet. So he mourned the Flamberge, and then he tributed a Snake Eye monster that he had on the field and the puppet for Nibiru. And then crashed Nibiru and the Flamberge into each other, so it burnt me for 3,000 in time because he mourned it. I know, it was absolutely insane. So, but there was probably a way for me to win that game, if we had like some time and we were able to like play it out. But it happens. But yeah, no, that was a super, super solid game. Shout out to Chris for like seeing that line. Like there was like 30 seconds left, and then yeah, no, it was awesome. Super, super cool match.
Yeah.
And then round 11, the last round of Swiss. So this is my bubble match. I'm what 8-1? No, 8-2 at this point. So I have to win this match that I'm in. I played against what's it called? Phantom Knights. It's like the Phantom Knight Adventure or Horus deck. That was pretty cool. Game 1, I puppeted him, and then game 2, he drew insane hand. He just had like 5 back row. His opening hand was like Enchantress, and then like Imseti, Pitch like Cloak, and then his last 2 cards in hand were, I think he hard opened a Fogblade, and then he had Torn Scales and Boots. So yeah, he ended his turn with like the Draco Bag, Fateful Adventure, double set Fogblade, I think an Imperm, and then he has 6 monsters on the field. It was like Token, Griffin Rider, Rusty Bardiche, SP Little Knight, and like the rank 8 Photon Lord. So yeah, insane board, but I had Harpy's Feather Duster, which he negated with Griffin Rider. I chain Droplet, so I negated like pretty much all of his guys, and then sent his entire back row to the graveyard, and then started clearing his guys. He banished his Fogblade to summon out Rusty to pop a card. And then this was the game where I made Quertus, because he activated whenever he banished the Fogblade and summoned out Rusty and then popped a card, he triggered Torn Scales to summon itself from the graveyard also. And I had Granguinol at the field at this point. So since it was summoned by a monster effect, I banished the Granguinol to summon Quertus, and then used its effects to make the SP, the Rusty, and the Breaksword that were all in attack mode to 0. So then I just branded Fusion, summon Albion, summon Mirror Jade, and attacked over all of his guys for game. Yeah, so like I killed him through like he had like 6 cards on like 6 monsters on field, and I was still able to beat him over it. But yeah, no, that dude was super cool. That match was insane. A crazy Velvet match. Top 32, I played against Aaron Furman, another super cool guy. That was also on stream. He played against Runic Stun. All I can say in that match is Borrelfurious Dragon, man. It hit the field turn 1 and it never left. I just threatened popping his Synchro Zone and his cards every single turn. It single-handedly won me that match.
Wow.
And then, top 16, I lost to Cam Neal. Game 1, it was crazy. He rolls an 11, and I roll a 12. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. So game 1, I puppeted him. I automatically win. As soon as I like get to the Sanctifier, he just like picks up his cards, and I'm like, oh sweet, yes. Because no matter what happens game 2, I get to go first. Game 3. Game 2 was super grindy. Because he ended up, I don't play any hand traps, of course, so he just like full Snake Eyes combo, and he was playing the hand loop. So he looped 2 cards out of my hand. He hit evenly, unfortunately, so we had a game. But yeah, I still broke his board and everything, and it got super technical and grindy. I wish I could replay that game, because I feel like there was a way to win, just because of like all the interactions and stuff that happened. But yeah, he unfortunately pulled that one out. I didn't know he played Typhon. I assumed he was still like on like Axis Code and like generic stuff. But yeah, no, he destroyed me with the Typhon, bouncing my my Mirror Jade, which was like my last interaction. And that's kind of like where he drolled me, where I told you earlier, where I had the Branded lost and he drolled me. And I would have had the Mercarier in order to negate the Typhon bounce. And I would have been able to keep them a Mirror Jade for my next turn. And I would have pulled it out for sure, because I would have gotten my 2 cards back from Omega and stuff. So yeah, that was unfortunate. And then game 3, I just bricked. I had a playable card, but everything else, it didn't line up. I had like Talents, Thrust, Fusion Duplication, another random card, and then Branded Opening. And then I Branded Opening, summoned out Aliber, and he mournered it, unfortunately. So yeah, I just wasn't able to really do too much. I had Talents, but it was in the main phase, and I couldn't really Thrust for anything like super valuable. And then yeah, he was just able to kill me on the following turn. But no, it was a great weekend. Top 16 is pretty solid. I've topped, this is like my 4th premier top with Branded. I've topped 2 nationals, YCS Philly, and then now this. So hopefully I can win with it eventually.
Yes, sir. We're looking forward to it. Are you going to be at Indy this year, or will we be seeing you at Nats?
Yeah.
Yep.
You'll see me at both. Yeah, I live in Kentucky, so I'm only like 2 hours from Indy, so I'll definitely be there, and then I'll be at Nats for sure.
Hell yeah. With that being said, thank you very much for coming on the channel, Clifton. Is there anything that you want to plug, or any last minute shoutouts before we get out of here?
I don't think so. I just hope Branded keeps getting more support, and as long as Konami keeps turning a blind eye to cards like Sanctifier, Branded Fusion, and stuff, I think this deck will continue to thrive.
Completely agree. Thank you very much, Clifton, for coming on, and we'll be seeing you guys later. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Wonderful deck profile. We'll be seeing you guys later.